Hey, Mark here, and I have a really cool giveaway for you. I have 5 digital copies of Billie Eilish Hit Me Hard and Soft, the tour, up for grabs. And if you'd like to win a copy, just shoot me a message. Be like, Mark, Billie Eilish teamed up with James Cameron to make an immersive concert film. I'm all in. That sounds great. Why not? I love a concert. Concert films are great. We need more of them. More concert films, please. So if you'd like to win a copy, just shoot me a message and let me know. Now you can bring Billie Eilish sold out tour home with her brand new concert film, Billie Eilish Hit Me Hard and Soft, the tour. Co-directed by Billie Eilish and James Cameron, this immersive all-access experience takes you behind the scenes and closer to Billie than ever before. Buy on digital and watch at home now.
Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me, Megan Hoffmeyer.
Sarah Newworth, DJ Valentine, Billy Business, and Brendan Peters. This is Andy Boetes. This is Nathan Leahy. It's David Cross. It's Jake Lewitt. Norbert Morvan. It's Lisa Leahy. Joey Lewandowski. John Levingood. Professor Mike Dillon. Nick Riak. Niall Moore. Adam Youngblood Hutt. Eric Hoffmeyer. It's Johnny Nunn. Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a real mean motor scooter. It's Professor Mike Dillon.
Heyo.
In a film that has 114 F-bombs and just guns pointing at faces and incredible amounts of nudity, that line really sticks out to me because it's not profane.
You say 114, that's oddly specific. You didn't go and count, did you?
Yeah.
Okay. All of its variants, I imagine.
Yeah, it's just, there's so many of them. The good thing is at the end, the last third is all action, or the last half. Oh, no, I would say the last third is just all action. So there's not much dialogue. But in the beginning, Clooney's just popping them out left and right. So, 114 is what I got.
Take your word for
I had
it.
a quick read of the script. So
Wait, you didn't count the number of pussy?
3,000.
Okay. I imagine this movie probably holds the record, yeah, outside of porn. It's a show-stopping monologue.
And this movie's really, obviously when I saw it, I was 14 and now I'm 43. But when I saw it when I was 14, the stuff in the hotel with the bank teller really affected me. The band playing the human flesh guitars affected
Yeah.
me. Like it was, and when the brother got ripped apart with his water condoms exploding, that got me. I remember this movie being scary as hell. Like I didn't get a lot of the comedic elements. I didn't. I don't know. It was, so much of the stuff. There's a lot of things that are played for laughs, and it just all the flipping. There's so much flipping in the fight in From Dusk Till Dawn, which makes me really happy. But I remember this film at 14 just absolutely really unsettling me. I wasn't ready for just the murder involved and how horrifying Richie is in this movie. I mean, Richie Gecko is horrible. And so it was really a unique experience for me. But now when I watch it, I think I have more of it. Like now that I know a lot of where the references are coming from, now that I know the twists, it's a lot more fun. It's an interesting film how when you become more film literate, you understand a lot more of the jokes in it and like what they're going for. But yeah, I remember this one. I was not ready for it when I was 14. So maybe they didn't market it that way. It was more of like an action film, not like a bank teller gets horrifyingly tore apart and then just left in the background type film. But I don't know if you felt that when you first watched it, or did you immediately get the vibe of it?
My memory is I was really enthusiastic about the film. It didn't scare me necessarily, but it did. I remember telling people that it was awesome. I saw it before a lot of my friends, and I kept telling them, watch it, but don't look anything up. Like just go in blind because I didn't want them to know. And that in itself makes me think that I didn't know that it was going to be about vampires, because I remember distinctly wanting my friends to have the same experience I did of just utter surprise. Looking back on it now, and I just rewatched it to prep for this, it's 2 movies, right?
Yeah.
The first half is kind of a crime thriller caper. And then the second half, of course, is this vampire gore fest. And given that there's such a clean break between the two, it makes me wonder. I would have said at the time, without reservation, that the second half is awesome. It's bananas. It's gory. It's got great effects, and it's just as a teenager at the time myself, getting into horror, I just thought this was really, really cool. And you got to get through the first half to be rewarded with this sort of really bananas new direction the film takes, and then it gets really going. That was the impression I had at the time. Looking back on it, or looking at it now, I think the first half is much stronger. The dialogue is stronger. I like the second half in all of its goofiness and excess, but it's the first half that has some really good tension building. It's I think arguably more of a horror film because it's rooted in really, really dark, uh, horrific real world behavior. I think there's something arguably distasteful about having the Tarantino character sort of violently rape and murder somebody in one scene, and to construct that in a really kind of horrific way, the way you get these flashes of the blood on the bed and the phone is off the hook, and that it's a
Mm.
really, really shocking and dark moment. But then his sort of sexual proclivities and his sort of misogyny is then played for laughs almost from the next scene onward. And
Yeah.
so I don't know, there's something a little bit off about that to me, which is to give us something so raw and then to start making jokes about it almost immediately. Culminating in, of course, like the pussy, pussy, pussy. There's kind of a strain of like boys will be boys ickiness to this movie that gave me an itch this time around.
No, and also if you watch the documentary Full Tilt Boogie about it, there's a lot
Yeah,
of it.
yeah, I've never seen it.
There's a lot of the boys will be boys type stuff in it. They're just like, oh yeah, like a lot of the ladies want to sleep with Clooney. They're just seeing where Juliette Lewis is just talking and they're walking up behind her like goosing her, and they're just
Yeah,
like, they're dropping some words that you want to hear. The opening scene is like a mashup between Saturday Night. So the opening of the docs, Full Tilt Boogie, it's Clooney and Tarantino, and it's a mashup of Saturday Night Fever and the scene in Spinal Tap where they get lost through the corridors. But there's like walking through, hitting on ladies, calling people derogatory terms, and like it's a very boys will be
yeah.
boys type film.
I do like this movie. I
Yeah, yeah.
recognize, especially I appreciate the obvious attempt to generate or maybe pay homage to the aesthetic of 70s grindhouse cinema, which is essentially what
Getaway
this
and
is. Yeah, I think it's neat that, and I thought this at the time, that these so-called like bad boys of 90s independent cinema, although I mean that's largely like a media fabrication. It's cool that they got together to collaborate, and I know this is like the third thing they've worked on together after Desperado and Four Rooms, but
mhm.
there is a kind of button pushing, taboo busting trashiness to the film that gives it a certain identity and like a devil may care cheekiness to it. And I love all that. That said, it is about two dudes getting together to celebrate the male gaze, right? It's going like, yeah, vampire strippers, man, let's do it. The whole thing is really juvenile when you think about it. It's just these two bros writing a film in which they surround themselves with beautiful naked women. And of course, Tarantino writes himself into a scene that involves Salma Hayek sticking her foot in his mouth, right?
So much
So
feet.
yeah, so the kind of the boys will be boys. There, it's kind of gross at the same time.
No, and I completely agree. And the nucleus of the origin of this screenplay is, I don't know if you know about how it came to be, but
I don't think so.
Robert Kurtzman of KMB, legendary effects special effects house, they wanted to make a movie to showcase their skills. So it's largely just people get locked in a place that vampires lock them in, and a bunch of bikers and everyone are killed by them. And so it's a really smart idea as like a siege thriller, almost like the entire time. But then they met Tarantino and they paid him $1,500 to write the script for them. And the condition was he would write it for $1,500 if they would do the effects on Reservoir Dogs for free. And so, if you read his book, What Cinema Speculation, he loves the
Mhm.
getaway. He loves like hard boiled kind of 70s crime films. That's kind of what he went to go watch with his mom. Like that, his mom would take him to movies, and he grew up loving that type of film, like this, that. And so you could tell that they said that it went from the siege thriller, then the first hour became the brothers traveling and going in hotel rooms and going to El Rey, which is the getaway. And,
Mhm.
we're self-contained is from Race with the Devil. The geckos are like five venoms. He like the Wild Bunch. What's in Mexico? Mexicans. Like he has Assault from Precinct 13. He just expanded it to that. But then the problem is they couldn't make it because it's like, well, the first hour is just not vampires. So then they had a hard time funding it because I think he started writing it in the early 90s. Then Reservoir Dogs took off, and then they still couldn't get funding. And then Pulp Fiction took off. And then Tarantino remembered that they had the script. So he told the Weinsteins, I'm making this next. And Robert Rodriguez is my friend. So we're going to direct it. And then they just like started the casting process. And yeah, then they just made it really, really non-union shoot. They got in a lot of trouble for that. Like And then the cast and crew are just complaining endlessly about it in the doc, which is fascinating. And there's a scene with this AD. They're like, "Hey, why did you become an AD?" He's like, "Well, he's like, I've just been in it for too long. That's what happened." He's like, "I can't really do anything else." I'm like, I just love that
Aw.
everyone's pissed. Like they're working 17-hour days complaining about the food, and they just go back to their hotels and you have 4 people in a room and they're just drinking beers, pissed off. I'm like, I've had those nights. So that was a really interesting thing about the doc. But I think when you're saying it's boys will be boys, you're right. I mean, it was the 90s too. Like I think a lot of that, you just had that. But also, to be fair, vampire movies in general, they are loaded with like sex and nudity and music, which this one, and crime. And I think there's certain like aspects to vampirism that always pops up. So, there's a lot of nudity in a lot of vampire films. So I'm not saying it's right, but I think they understood the genre and kind of stayed like created this really R-rated grindhouse thing that's pretty unapologetic about what it is. And I do think though, buried in with it, like I think the strongest actor here is Harvey Keitel. Bringing him in like is like Tarantino's good. Like I think they direct him well because he knows what the character is. Clooney's good, but you can feel him trying a little too hard to be cool, but he still gets the dialogue across well. He has
Yeah.
a great screen presence.
Keitel brings the gravitas, right? And you
Yeah.
notice that he's billed first in the credits.
Yeah, because he's
Um,
great. That I'm one mean.
mm.
And just the way my favorite line in this movie actually has some interesting things to say. When he looks at Seth and he goes, "You're such a loser that you don't know when you've won." That's a good line. I like that he's going through this spiritual crisis, and neither of them believe in vampires, but they believe in their eyes. And then he kind of has this sort of, well, if these things are evil, then like religion exists. It's kind of they do pack some interesting themes in this movie, but then it's also very boys will be boyish. So it's just a
That
lot smashed into one, but it still works well.
in hindsight, the those discussions about theology, I kind of had a different read on it. I don't have a read actually. I had a different reaction, which was it felt a little repetitive because he covers conversations in a similar vein in Pulp Fiction about the nature of miracles and divine intervention,
Can I
right?
cut you off
So,
there?
yeah.
That line was from the original From Dusk Till Dawn. And in an interview with Joe Rogan that I listened to with Robert Rodriguez, he said, "We got to make this now because you're pulling stuff from Dusk Till Dawn and putting it in your other movies." He's like, "If we wait, all From Dusk Till Dawn is going to be in your other films." So
So Pulp Fiction with vampires,
yeah, it's like,
could have happened.
but that Ezekiel line and everything, that was from Dusk Till Dawn. And then he just put it into Pulp Fiction.
Oh wow.
And then so Robert Rodriguez was like, "Stop, we need to have a script." So I just wanted to let you know that even though it's repetitive, it's just funny that he pulled from Dusk Till Dawn to put that into Pulp Fiction.
So we were just what a couple of rewrites away from having Richie and Seth Gecko discuss like the benefits of a foot massage.
Yes, exactly. And they're eating kahuna burgers in this one too. And they shoot people in the face.
Have you seen Curdled?
Curdled? Is
Yeah.
that is that the spinoff?
It's like in universe to use
Yeah.
our current language, right? And the Kelly Preston character was the news anchor talking about
The kill count.
the kill count, the carnage count. She's the link, and she has a news report in Curdled that references the Gecko brothers, and that's about the only connection. But it stars I don't remember the actress name, but she's the Esmeralda Villalobos, the cab driver
The cab driver,
Butch
yeah.
that Butch gets into the cab with, and it's kind of her own spin-off movie.
Oh,
It's
that's
pretty
cool.
fun if you haven't seen it. It's not great, but it's just kind of a fun little shared universe film that
I loved her in
I'm
that. She
recommending.
popped in that scene in Pulp Fiction. No, but I've always wanted to watch Curdled and I never have. So this is my
Yeah,
motivation
check
to
it
watch
out.
it. Yeah, yeah. But I don't know. But overall though, watching this, I guess, this is still an effective grindhouse movie. And even when you know the twist, I think you can still have some enjoyment with it. I think some movies, when you know what's going to happen, you lose that, but there's still things to discover. And it's kind of, like I said, it's fun coming back to this when you're more film literate, because then you can pull like, the Precinct 13. I didn't know what that meant in 96. Like I had no clue that was like a siege thriller directed by John Carpenter, who was influenced by westerns. So I don't know. I think you can watch this several times throughout the years and pull more from it. But how what do you feel about Clooney's performance in this movie?
Well, sorry.
It's all good.
Um, so I have thoughts about Clooney, but before that, can I
Oh,
respond to the last thing you
yeah,
said? Like,
sure.
this is a movie.
I'm like a pinball thing, just bouncing all
No,
over
no,
the place.
I am, you know, generally thumbs up on this movie. I enjoy it. I think it's doing fun things, but it is also a movie that kind of is available for different types of lenses of analysis, right? Because if you look at it in context, you've got Rodriguez, you've got Tarantino. This is after Pulp Fiction. He's the kind of the new kid on the block, and he's doing exactly what you alluded to, right? He's making movies that are just really fun for cinephiles to watch because they're just such pastiches of references, and it's really rewarding cinephilia all the way. And so he's doing things that are just considered new and edgy. And this is the independent wave of 90s. You've got Kevin Smith, you've got Soderbergh, you've got all these really interesting things happening in the 90s before movies start to get really tame, right? And this is also like when 95 is Showgirls, you got Verhoeven going completely
Yes.
off the rails in his own way. So 90s, there were studios willing to back really edgy stuff because edgy was in. And I think Tarantino and Rodriguez were both like, hey, if they're gonna let us make this, let's go. Let's be brazen.
Yeah.
Let's really go full grindhouse. And I'm sure that revolted some people at the time, but there's a sense in this movie of two guys who just cannot believe what they're getting away with. You
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um, and so, but that's that cultural context in Hollywood cinema, I think, is really important for understanding why this movie even exists and why Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez are these two guys who are just going for it. You look at this movie now and you can enjoy it for all the same reasons that it would have been enjoyable at the time, but the kind of misogyny might be a little too strong of a word, but the kind of chauvinism of it for sure, the objectification of women all the way through, it just kind of, I think the culture is more primed to view things through that filter. And I'm not saying that's necessarily the correct way to view it or a superior way to view it, but the culture around how we talk about films has changed in a way that I think maybe this movie is only kind of insulated from insofar as that it's so obviously trashy grindhouse that it's just begging not to be taken that seriously, or at least it has kind of a built-in disavowal, right? And just be like, well, yeah, it's obviously very male gazy, but it's also meant to invoke the style and aesthetics of the 70s, in which sexism was like par for the course. It was a feature, not a bug, right? And so I think it's a movie that lends itself to different interpretations over time, which I think is not good or bad, but certainly interesting. And of course, I come at it from an academic perspective, right? To revisit these things and filter them through different cultural perspectives and stuff like that. So I think this movie has kind of a use value in that way because every generation you show it to, they might come away with different objections to it.
And I think another thing it has going for like it towards its advantage, as the thing working towards its advantage, is that I was reading a lot of the 30th anniversary just happened. I was reading not 30th, yeah, 30th. Jeez
Well,
Louise.
it's 96, right? So this year would be 30th.
Yeah, it was just in January, so yeah, 30th anniversary, and there's a lot. It really hasn't had that canceled vibe to it yet, or it hasn't. I think some people have said what you've said, but I think in general, most people who write about it nowadays understand that what it was, if that makes sense. It's
I think we're well into the phase of sort of what at the time was called political correctness,
yeah,
for sure. And I think that was in the air in a way that like that's the norm against which people like Rodriguez and Tarantino seemed really edgy and just kind of original and cool, right? Because they were the rebels of sort of the conventional studio system. And that's the energy that they're clearly coasting on and taking well advantage of. Because we're in this kind of Goldilocks zone between like this movie was clearly received as very politically incorrect and very raw and brazen in that way, but before any of that would have become cancelable, because
yeah,
cancel culture is we're we've got a couple decades before that really is in full effect, and so yeah, it's a movie very much of its time, right? I do wonder if you were to show this now to people if they would be offended. I think people would have been more offended by how gory the second half is. Now I think people would be more offended by how ugly the first half is. And the second half, they would just shrug it off as just kind of horror action cinema.
You're right though. I guess it works towards my advantage because I grew up in this era watching all this movies, so I know the era and I know what was coming out. And '96 was actually a pretty rough time for, not rough, but there were some pretty edgy movies in '96. There was Freeway, Crash. Even I think The
Yeah,
Cable Guy was an edgy film. I
Cable Guy's
think,
underrated.
yeah, like that movie was dark when it came out. And also, Scream in '96. No movie has gone as far as the Casey. None of the Screams have gone as far as the Casey Becker killing from the first one, where she's gutted, hanging up. Like, this is a pretty aggressive. You're right. There was a time where, I don't know. This was definitely an aggressive era of
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean,
indie
the
films.
Casey Becker bit is also the shock value also has to do with it being Drew Barrymore,
Yeah,
right? But even that scene is really edited to shit when you see her hanging. Like that, there's clearly that kind of like whoosh 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 effect to kind of obscure the shock value of that. And so you can kind of see this push me, pull you. The filmmakers are going for it, but then the studios are hanging back a little bit. Freeway is a great example of just really edgy cinema, but that's not a studio film, right?
yeah,
Neither
true.
is Crash. And so I think that tension between mainstream studio stuff, because 96 is Twister and Independence Day, which are giant, sort of very summer blockbuster, family oriented films that are just maybe straining the PG-13 at the time, but definitely in the PG-13 range versus independent cinemas where you go the really really hardcore stuff, right? Even I think Boondock Saints is nonsense, but you know what we're talking about. Here's what we're talking about. We're talking about Weinstein, right? The kind of the mentorship that he brought to people like Kevin Smith and Rodriguez and Tarantino, and the kind of letting loose of these people to go out and make really kind of at the time seemingly dangerous stuff, I think is the culture we're talking about now. If you want to bring in and tie everything back into this kind of ickiness toward women that I almost said Epstein, Freudian slip, that Weinstein represents now, then I think I don't know if there's anything fair about going back in time and pretending like we saw the breadcrumbs all along. I don't think that's necessarily the way to go, but it paints an interesting picture, I think, of, like I said, just rephrasing it, the tension between mainstream family-oriented traditional studio filmmaking versus this burgeoning independent movement that is also trying to find its own identity, right? And trying to find where the boundaries are and what's acceptable and what's not. Because, they're like movies like Kids, which is, I think,
Whoo,
94,
95.
95,
Yeah,
95, and then Gummo after that. I mean, those are movies that
Bully.
well, Bully's a bit later, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
in
you're right.
terms of 90s cinema, Welcome to the Dollhouse, these are movies that really do push the boundaries, and some of them didn't emerge unscathed, right? I think given the career trajectory of Tarantino and Clooney especially, I think this movie, everyone involved in From Dusk Till Dawn emerged kind of unscathed. But the people who came out of Kids, not necessarily. The backlash to that film was immense, right?
And I still get sad watching Bully because some of the several of the actors involved all got like really into drugs and just messed up working on it. And then some of the kids from Kids died of ODs. So like that's like, I guess the only thing, that's just such dangerous filmmaking. And that Larry Clark was such a, we look back, gross guy with the way he got
Yeah,
his performances.
we look back now, but at the same, so
Yeah, at the
yeah,
time
just
though, it was
reiterate
like
this
this, like
point.
Ebert gave Kids a great review. He was like, this movie is real. But then you look back at it and you're like, wait a second. Wait, that's probably not a good thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of window, the 90s, precisely because, you have your Independence Days and your Jurassic Park, the kind of advent of CGI and things like that, but then more lowbrow stuff that is aiming for lowbrow deliberately. I think From Dusk Till Dawn is in this weird in-between space, which is that it is trying to capture that, for lack of a better term, trashy energy, but within kind of the confines of a studio. I think the best example of that is Showgirls, right? Which is to have a studio produce this NC-17 movie. I adore Showgirls, but
Same, same.
right, I think it's brilliant, but it's also kind of a movie of its era, right? When the studios, it's kind of the last decade in which the studios, last decade thus far, in which the studios are willing to put money into genuinely exploitative material. And then the culture kind of moved away from that. The kind of business model moved into more IP oriented stuff. And these types of movies are now, rarer and rarer, both in terms of their budget allocation, but also in terms of their content. People are a little too afraid, I think. For that reason, I think I'm positive on people knowing about From Dusk Till Dawn, just because it's just such a movie of its era,
And sex
from
was
both
marketed.
industrial
Yeah.
perspectives as well as cultural perspectives.
Sex was marketed so hard in the 90s though. Remember like like so in the States, the Specialist was all like they have sex. Striptease came out in 96. Demi Moore is naked. Exit to
Wild
Eden.
Things.
Wild Things. Like I even Linda Fiorentino's thrillers, like those were all just
Uh-huh.
sex. So that was, I remember that era specifically
Yeah,
was just,
it's a genre that doesn't exist anymore, the erotic
yeah.
thriller. Yeah.
And they were big back then, like Showgirls, and just like there was even a movie called Milk Money where a prostitute is hired
Yeah, it's
from kids to like,
Melanie Griffith, yeah.
like it was such an odd it was such an odd era. Yeah,
But
and then,
it's also an era in which these types of erotic thrillers attracted really big stars,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
And Fiorentino ruled in them, by the way. She was, I love her in those movies. She had like a danger to her that I like. So, but yeah, I mean, so yeah, it's very much so a product of its time, but also I think the craft of it was neat as well. I mean, if we're going to talk about vampire lore, Rodriguez pulled from the Cualabras, which is like a snake-like type of vampire. So I pulled this up here. Semi-reptilian species of immortal and feral creatures that feed on blood. In the series, they are given the condition from the bite of another Cualabra, and so they're like they originated from Zabulba, the first realm, where they were nothing more than slaves to the demons. But I liked when Salma Hayek turns, she's like a snake, and when Sex Machine, you if you cut their heads off, they just grow into something else. He turns into a giant rat. You have wing creatures. You have more like, it's like with zombies. You have the A zombies, B zombies, C zombies. So you have the really ornate ones, and then you have the lesser ones, and then you have the background ones that with less makeup. But you have one that like bites people's heads off with its stomach. So I think it offers a really interesting type of lore where they're traditional in the sense that they can be killed by crosses and holy water, which they should have just used all those condoms filled with water. Like that would have been deadly to everybody. But
Well, I mean, that's all interesting. I don't mean to
yeah.
shut it down, but I haven't seen, I know there's a couple of what at the time would have been called straight to video sequels to From Dusk Till Dawn. I haven't seen them, so maybe they expand on the lore a little bit,
Oh, they
but
do. I watch recaps
do
of
they?
them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because to go back to the kind of cheeky tone of this movie, which and let me get back to the vampire lore in a second, but the trashed aesthetic of the movie, right, is pretty important here because, and it's also arguably where people might object to the film, just echoing what I was saying earlier, because there's some truly dark stuff going on in the film that's being aestheticized and being made stylish and funny and cool, even though it's being extremely exploitative in a lot of ways, and not only in terms of its treatment of women, but there's also a problem when you think about how it portrays the border as being dangerous and crass and lawless, and
Yeah.
it's like in many ways true to the conventions of basically the Western, in terms of like the kind of savage and uncivilized frontier out there, but it's also perpetuating negative stereotypes, especially when considering that this is a story about white Americans getting into trouble down south. But I think a lot of it ends up being kind of excusable, and there isn't really a cultural controversy around this movie because that tone is so crucial. And I think when it comes to the vampires, it's really important that it has this outrageous tone, because the more ridiculous the movie gets in terms of its action and violence, it also gets messier in terms of its action design. So like during the final battle, it's so clear
It's bad. Yeah.
that, yeah, I mean the four of them split up to fight the vampires in four different ways with their respective weapons, but it's so obvious that they would be overrun in seconds, right? And
Yeah.
if you look at the choreography, you see all of these sort of
Running around the background.
they're running around the background, just sort of hanging out and doing nothing, right? So in addition to that, there's also just kind of a factor.
Yeah.
So like when Sex Machine, like you mentioned, he's beheaded and then he turns into a giant rat monster. It's a really cool creature effect. It's really nicely done, but it makes no sense within the logic of the film because he's the only character that's killed but then mutates into a whole other monster. The point being, I think these inconsistencies would be much harder to overlook were it not for the film already having an irreverent tone that it's been coasting on up until this point. And so when you tell me that, oh, this is actually built on lore that accounts for all these variations within the vampires, I'm like, that's pretty awesome and interesting in its own right, but the movie doesn't present itself as a movie with rules or
No, that
lore
makes
that it's
sense.
drawing upon, right? It is pretty haphazard during the last, or to, actually the entire, once it becomes a vampire movie, I kept wondering, like, these vampires suck at what they're doing, so to speak.
Yeah, they're very
They're
bad.
they're they're bad at this. They're too easy to kill, and they've been doing this for whatever centuries. And no, you guys are too easily dispatched.
Yeah, they're just running around the background and just getting white. Like Sex Machine has no problem with them. Fred Williamson picks up four and flips a table and drops them on that, and it's all very stylish in there. But I guess I do like that. But also we have to remember this is a showcase for K&B. This is what the movie started off to be. So they're probably like, you
Right.
know what? What are some things a monster with a stomach who eats heads, a rat, a flying thing, and it is a great showcase for them. I mean, the gore effects are fantastic.
It's great. The flesh guitar is great.
Oh man, that really messed me up as a kid. I don't know why, but that was an image when I saw it. When I was like, I wish 14-year-old me hadn't seen that. It felt that's probably the darkest thing. And part of me wondered how they switched so quick, and if they were actually playing music, and then where they went when they disappeared, and why more. Never mind. You don't want to think about that.
That's an
But
actual band, right? Tito and Tarantula.
yeah, and like they were rocking. I love the music, and they're in the other films as well. They pop up in other moments, but I don't know. But I thought Sex
Yeah, I
Machine was super cool. Like, what's your name? Sex Machine. Like he wasn't lecherous or anything later on. He just was like, hey, I'm Sex Machine.
he has a good line. He says, "Oh yeah, yeah, Peter Cushing used to do that all the time."
I missed that one. What
And so
was
they
that?
said something. They're having a discussion about how to kill vampires. It's like, okay, well, crosses work. What about garlic? What about silver? And he's like, well, does anyone have any silver? If not, who cares? And someone says, yeah, we stake through the heart. He goes like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Peter Cushing used to do that all the time.
Well, I get that now. I missed that line. But yeah, I guess I like the characters in there. Juliette Lewis in '96 was just a legend already for me. I mean, Natural Born Killers destroyed me. She's in a vacation movie. Like, so I thought, I don't.
Is this kind of where she peaks though? No disrespect to Juliette Lewis, but what has she done after 96 that is on par with this? Because California is kind of amazing.
Oh
Cape
yeah.
Fear, she got an Oscar nomination for Cape Fear, and then of course Killers in 94. But then after this, like she's working, she's in a number of things, but I don't think she really reaches the heights of this maybe 2 to 3 year span after Dust Till Dawn. Maybe there's some movie I'm missing, but I can't
Yeah.
think of anything that's as prominent in her career.
Oh geez, wait. She had Cape Fear, California, Romeo's Bleeding. She had What's Eating Gilbert Grape, Natural Born Killers, Mixed Nuts wasn't great. Then she was Basketball Diaries. Oh yeah, Strange Days, From Dusk Till Dawn. Oh, you know what killed her? The other sister
Okay.
in '99.
Yeah, that makes sense.
She's in the way of the gun though, but also I think this isn't her fault, but I think a lot of her style was kind of the California, the the Natural Born Killers. When you start off that heightened, like she went to some big places. It's hard to sort of come back from that. But I mean, I'm looking through her filmography, and I mean, she's really never stopped working, and
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
been
I know she's
on
working. She's been in a lot of stuff, but she's never been,
oh
she
hit
was kind of
that
a household name in the 90s. But I also think she always played, when you think of Mallory from Natural Born Killers, like she's very punk,
yeah
right? And Juliette Lewis has the punk band, I think. Isn't it called Juliet and the Licks? Is that what it's called?
oh
So she
nice
just kind of has this punk energy that just didn't carry over once the 90s became the 2000s, I think.
it
Just
definitely a '90s
people didn't
vibe.
know, yeah, people didn't know what to do with her.
I think that's exactly it. Like once you hit, but also you have this punk image when you're younger, and then get a little bit older, and then the 2000s roll around, and it's a completely different era with old school and 40-year-old virgin and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I apologize if she has played this and I just don't know about it,
yeah
but I find it difficult to picture, and this is partly because I'm so biased about her 90s roles, which are more iconic. I can't picture Juliette Lewis as a mom,
yeah
right? Playing a mom in some family drama. I think you're right. She aged out of the kind of niche that she occupied in the 90s, and then people didn't know what to do with her. And it just, if you're in your 20s and you have a punk vibe, that's cool. You can excel in certain types of films. But if you're in your 30s and then in your 40s and you're that punk, it kind of ends up being awkward and a little bit sad, right? So
and every decade changes quickly based on
like if you look at the 60s, this change in the 60s from the early 60s to the late 60s. If we look at the 90s, how that evolved from kind of the grungy indie scene to like 99 and then just more aggressive like then I think 99 like was like Limp Bizkit, Corn, like it was just changed, it changed so suddenly that people with her kind of like punk aesthetic didn't quite fit in. So I think that's exactly, I think that makes sense. It's just but Todd Phillips has kept her working. He's kind of a punk. I mean, he did a Gigi Allen documentary, so it makes sense that he would keep putting her in all of his films. That's interesting. But yeah, but she's really good in it. Like she's sort of fearless. In the behind the scenes doc, she's like, yeah, lying just act. Like she said, acting is lying. She's like, I just walk in and I lie and I get out of there. Like she's like the chillest person on set. And when she's doing that line, she's like, Richie, would you lick my, she's like, I was hamming that up too much. And there's a scene where Clooney got her a bunch of gifts on set, and she was like opening up all these gifts that Clooney got her, and someone like looks at the camera and goes, Clooney loves her. So I thought that was kind of
Oh,
funny. So
I completely forgot you asked me what I thought of Clooney's performance.
oh yeah.
I think it's pretty good. I mean, this is his big transition out of TV, right?
Yeah,
This movie.
this is it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's still doing that thing he had a habit of doing all through ER, which is the head tilt.
Yeah. I'm
You
doing it.
know, he
He
just
wanted
kind
to
of
be
looks at you with
Spader.
this cocky. Yeah, I think he's good in it. I think he's still kind of finding his groove a little bit, but in terms of kind of punchy delivering that dialogue, like I was obsessed back when I first saw it and when it came out on video and I was rewatching it with friends. The opening moment when he it's partly because of the way Rodriguez cuts it, but also when he says, "Everybody be cool, you be cool." That's such a great delivery, right? And I thought, yeah, this I'd never heard of. I think I learned about ER after the fact because I wasn't watching it on TV, and I just thought, yeah, this who's this actor? He's really slick.
Those tattoos.
That's a pretty iconic tattoo. I have pretty heavily tattooed myself, and when I hang out with my tattoo artist, we talk about movie tattoos, and I pulled up the one from Dusk Till Dawn because she hadn't heard of it, and you only see it in full at the end when he takes off his jacket, and she saw, was like, oh yeah, the tribal flames. That's very 90s. She was kind of dismissive of it. Actually, she's like, oh yeah, that's such a 90s thing to do. She felt the same way about Blade's tattoos.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wesley Snipes tattoos and Blade. He's like, yeah, that's very, oh yeah, tribal stuff, of course, 90s.
And the barbed wire.
The
There's a
barbed
lot of
wire.
barbed wire arms in
Yeah.
the States. I'm lucky I got out of that. I got two, and I didn't get one of those from Florida, so that's good.
Yeah, barbed wire tattoos would be 90s, and then the 2000s you're into like Chinese characters, uh
Yep.
and then
My good
onward. I
friend
wonder what's in now.
has those as well on his legs. So, but yeah, I mean, but I think with Clooney, when he's sticking guns in people's faces and trying to act tough, you can feel him acting that. It's not as like, but I think when he is having the conversation with Cattell and he's like, yeah, life has a way of like sticking it in and breaking it off. And Aaron Newworth loves this scene where he's like, yeah, best food in Mexico. He's like, I doubt that.
I
Like
kind of
that's,
doubt that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the scene with Cattell when he's like, you're too dumb to know when you've won. Like, I think that's an interesting line. And then he handles that well. And then he's like, all right, vampire hunters. Like, I think that's when you see his like screen charisma coming through is that he not only does he do a good job with the dialogue, but I think he's stronger with the more earnest type stuff. I don't, like when he plays a thief in movies, he's the charming thief. He's never the badass thief. So I don't know if I ever buy him as the badass, if that makes sense. I buy
Well,
him
that
as
that
like out of sight, right? Out of Ocean's
yeah.
11, the American whatever. He's good, but like I don't picture him as a physical kind of I'm a tough man vibe, and that's not his fault. But that's why I think he's at his best in this when he can deliver his dialogue and have scenes in earnest.
That makes perfect sense to me. I think what works for me with his performance is that you need him to be this sort of balance between threatening. So when he says, when he's laying out the rules to the bank teller, I got six friends and this gun and they can all run faster than you. You need to believe that he will kill him. And we know this because the opening scene is he shoots up the liquor store,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So we know he's violent and dangerous, but also there's a charm to him. right? There's something kind of charismatic about him, which you need to have as the foil to Richie, because Richie's meant to be just repulsive and a loose cannon. And so you need Seth to be the level-headed one who is
with a good headbutt.
a good headbutt, and but just the brains of the operation, and he knows how to talk his way into things. And I think Clooney has that balance, right? He's handsome and charming, and charismatic, but also he can be quite menacing and convincing as a killer in a way. So you're right that maybe there's a few line reads that don't quite stick the landing, and maybe just the lines are just a little too stylish for sort of Clooney's range at the moment. But I think it more or less works. You're right. He's not a beach to the ground badass, but I think that's also kind of where he ends up. He's disarming in a way because he can be really likable and charismatic, even though he's a psychotic killer, right? There's like different levels of psychopathy going on between the two brothers, and I think it does a decent enough job.
That
I
opening
think
scene is strong too, with Michael Parks and John Hawkes as well. Ebert summed it up when he's like, Michael Parks starts explaining his day and he creates an entire little world around it. I know they're talking a lot about a mongoloid sun, and that's very 90s, but
kind of want them to have the movie of their own.
yeah, right. And like
Yeah,
John Hawkes is perfect in this. I wasn't winking at him. There was no signs. Like, what are you like? He's Hawks.
That to me is the first big laugh of the movie.
Yeah.
That he's already been shot and he's, the gunfight's already broken out, and it's like, I told you, he said save us. He's like, I never said save us, as if it even matters at this point.
Yeah, from behind the bar, he says it. But yeah, he's hilarious in the movie. He's reading a magazine of bridal dresses. I don't know if you picked that up. And so
I didn't pick up on that. That's funny.
He's just flipping through this magazine and there's bridal dresses. And they're just talking about food and how certain things came up and how Michael Parks is pooping and how he's going to catch these people. And they really do build this little, like, he sells the Jack Daniels 650. Like, just I don't know.
I did notice how much of the later part of the movie is kind of telegraphed by the first one, because the opening shot is of this vast desert highway, and then there's this really outrageously ostentatious liquor store. It's not just some store in the middle of nowhere. It's just like a gigantic marquee thing. This is like Benny's World of Liquor, and it's like a tiny Texas liquor store's wet dream of itself, how big this thing is. And that kind of anticipates how brazen and big and brash the titty twister is later. The fact that this scene has like a really good fake out with, you have it seems like one thing is happening and then suddenly it switches on a dime when you realize that the killer's in the room. Yeah, so it's got a few things going on, including the kind of eruption of violence and all the rest of it. It just seems in subtle ways it mirrors the twists and turns that we know to anticipate later.
And the way Michael Parks, he slows down his dialogue. And a lot of Tarantino stuff is just like hit you, go, 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 fast. But then he slows in, and just the way that he pronounces certain words, just the way that he kind of like when I forget exactly what he says, but I don't know. Hot day. Haven't felt it a bit. Been inside with the air conditioner blasting all day long. He's like, not even for lunch. He's like, I don't know. He's like, I ate my lunch out the microwave. But then he slows it down. Jesus Christ, man, that microwave food will kill you quick. I just love how he slows it down.
Yeah.
I don't know. And he's like, I'm getting tanked tonight. And so it's such a different vibe. But I like that Tarantino wrote for him and he slows it down. But then you have the energy of Hawks, who's just like, he's just hilarious. I don't know.
It's arguably the best written scene in the movie.
I also love the picture of him later on doing with the fish.
With the fish, yeah.
And the popcorn's popping when he's dying. The one cut that the MPAA made Robert Rodriguez do was to get a little bit of the leg wiggling when he was dying and the popcorn was popping. Because the blood in this is green. There's a lot of green blood that explodes. But yeah, that was the one thing they were worried about, is when his leg is shaking while he's dying and the popcorn's popping. But I don't know. I love when they Pete Bottoms and he's just doing the fishing. That's like
so weird what the MPA,
yeah,
then MPAA focuses in on, right? Because in a movie that is all about carnage for about 45 minutes straight at the end, like that's the cut that you requested to keep it from NC-17. I mean,
do you think he had to keep it that silly? Like when Harvey Keitel, probably my favorite image from this film is when he has the baseball bat and the shotgun
Hmm.
and he's behind the bar, but then he stands up with it in front of that crowd. But when he shoots them, they just kind of fly back and go, "Wah!" And a lot of the violence when the attack does happen, there is some blood, but it's very cheeky in the background. And the deaths of a lot of the vampires, they are shooting them with like crotch guns or flipping them on the thing. So there isn't too much. I did a thing where I counted like 90 vampire movies and I figured out how much blood sucking on average there is, and the addiction has the most. Of course it does, the Abel Ferrara film, but there's not that much teeth on neck in this. There is some, but I don't know how. But Tarantino said he wasn't too worried about it, and so somehow that entire scene wasn't cut down, but a wiggling was, because that's what I get. You know what? Maybe that's more brutal. That's more mean. That's like more unnecessary. Whereas the vampire stuff is just, I guess, cheeky the way it's played.
No, I agree with that. I
Okay.
think there's something macabre about seeing this completely innocent man who doesn't have
Yeah.
it coming to then not only have him get shot, but then burned alive, and you see this leg twitching. There's something kind of really gruesome and unfair about the whole thing, as opposed to, well, you're gonna see how much blood when a vampire dies. Like, well, it's a vampire. You're not sympathetic toward them. There's no love lost, right? And so you see him get dispatched in a number of ways. I don't think that quite elicits the same pathos in the same way. That being said, the vampire deaths are really inconsistent in terms of it. The whole thing is inconsistent. Sex machine turns probably, I don't know, within 20 minutes or something.
Quick.
The Fred Williamson turns within seconds.
Yeah.
Right. And then the Harvey Keitel, Jacob, gets bitten, and then he saunters in and goes like, I reckon I got an hour before I turn into the holy undead. It's like, how the fuck would you know that? I reckon they're gonna burst in here in about 30 minutes. I'm like, what? How do you know that? Right. So there's kind of a very loose use of logic here. And you're right, the vampires, I do love the big reveal when he forms the cross with the shotgun and then stands up, and then all you've heard so far is sound design of these fluttering bats, and then he stands up and there they are, all these mutant vampires. I think the rubber suits are a little too obvious for me. I think the
Yeah.
practical effects overall are pretty great, but the rubber suits that have no genitals, it's just sort of there's kind of, I think that could have been done a little bit better. And you're right, when he shoots them with shotguns, they erupt in sparks, not blood, which is also very inconsistent from other points of the film, right? So yeah, I kind of wonder how much of that is maybe an MPAA consideration versus just sort of, yeah, we're just running and gunning it.
And now that we're talking about like more deaths and kills, I do think this movie does do a good job of, when the brother is killed, I think I
You mean Richie or
yeah.
the
Oh,
Asian kid?
I this is really bad.
Ernest Liu.
Yeah, Ernest Liu. When he is killed, I need to pull up the name here. I have
He
so many docs open.
explodes.
Yeah, when he
Why does
explodes.
he explode?
Oh yeah, that's true. But when he explodes, Scott explodes. I felt bad. I like Scott. When Seth is mourning Richie, I think Tarantino pulled that off well. When Jacob dies and he flips, that bummed me out because I like Cattell, like Harvey in this movie. I also, when Frost, or no, when Sex Machine gets bit with that good jump scare where the guy pops up, I was kind of bummed because I liked Sex Machine. And then when Frost got bit, I was like, oh man, I like Frost. So that's another effective thing about this movie is I don't know. I like Tom Savini. I like Fred Williamson in this movie. They were just oddballs. And I had no
Mhm.
idea who they were, but they kind of badasses. And I liked Earl when he gets shot in the back of the head. I liked our guy Pete Bottoms. So I think it does do a good job of, you do feel the kills. And I definitely remember feeling them a lot more when I was 14. Like I felt really bad for Scott and I liked Jacob. So this is a movie where it's silly, it's irreverent, not irreverent, it's silly, it's gory, there's very much of the male gaze, but I also kind of cared for the characters a little, like enough for a movie like this. Like I
All right,
did
so
feel the kills.
you're gonna make me say it because it's a vampire movie, but you felt the stakes.
Yeah. That comment didn't suck
Sounds
at
like
all.
sounds like what you're saying.
But there were stakes because it wasn't afraid to murder people. And I kind of like that. I think the bank teller death was unnecessary. That's a cruel moment. And
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
it's
funny.
ugly.
It's not it it's not funny. It's not, popcorn doesn't pop, right? Bodies don't just cheekily explode. It's a mean, like it's horrifying. Like that's some scene from like Freeway. I don't know not that, but that's a scene that wasn't needed. But they did a pretty good job of establishing him as a horrifying presence. So when he's in the bathroom with her, when he's looking at her, you do feel a little worried for Juliette Lewis, because this is a guy who he sees things like that where she talks to him. He's seeing things in his head. When he's like, he was scratching. I wasn't scratching. Sorry.
You're
Maybe
right.
because I'm scared as shit. I love
But
him in this movie.
this is where I have a little issue with how grim the bank teller death is. And I think there's something I don't really like about the fact that they cast a sort of a middle-aged woman who is not conventionally attractive as if to punctuate how horrific this is through casting by saying like, oh my God, like this is someone he wouldn't logically be attracted to, and he's still gonna rape her to death, and therefore it's all the more horrific. It's like, yeah, what are you guys doing? This is ugly and ugly on purpose. And it does serve a story function in terms of having the Tarantino character be this really kind of horrific character, but it's sandwiched in between the liquor store scene, which has a slapstick element to it, and it's got, of course, the cool guys don't look at explosions as they're walking
Yeah.
away. So it's a very stylish and cool, albeit very violent, but very cool scene. And then you get the bank teller death, which is not played for laughs whatsoever. But then immediately you go to him with the Juliette Lewis thing, and then they're in the back of the RV, and he's like, I'd do that for you if you want. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, oh yeah, I grind my teeth. Like that's played for laughs, and so it strikes me as kind of tonally incorrect to establish this character as being just unspeakably brutal, and then immediately switch to those brutal characteristics being the subject of kind of irreverent comedy and banter between him and Juliette Lewis. I'm like, okay, there's something, you're either taking him really seriously or you're not.
I agree.
And I think that tonal imbalance is a problem with the film. I think it was arguably a problem then. It's definitely a problem now.
And like when he gets knocked unconscious, when Seth headbutts him in the bathroom, or just knocks him out because the cops are coming in, or the border patrol's coming in, and then
Yeah.
later on he's like, "What happened? Oh, I just fell. I just," like they try to bring comedy out of that, and it's, yeah, that's, so there, yeah, I guess that doesn't. But I
I
always
wonder
felt
some of it
off.
might be Tarantino's limitations as an actor
Yeah,
as
that's
well. I mean,
true.
yeah, I mean, this really is the kind of era in which he was casting himself and stuff. I know he pops up in like Django and a few things here and there, but this is when he was giving himself full supporting roles instead of cameos, right? And I don't think it ever really worked.
He's not a Kevin Smith. I mean, Kevin Smith can hold the screen to a certain
You
extent as Silent Bob. Like he can
yeah,
hold it.
yeah. I mean, Kevin
Um,
Smith has comedy chops, right? Tarantino just likes to what put his own dialogue in his own mouth, and it's there's a lot of N-word use for Jimmy and Toluca Lake in Pulp Fiction.
yeah.
Do you see a sign in front of my house that says "dead N-word storage"? It's just there's something kind of, I mean, yeah, the word I want to use is juvenile about Tarantino that I think comes through in this performance, especially when you consider the not 0% chance that the only reason he wrote himself into it is for that Salma Hayek foot scene. I know that's an easy joke to make about Tarantino, but it strikes me as entirely plausible.
Well,
But also, yeah,
when Robert Rodriguez directed, he asked Tarantino to be in it, and now the thing is, Tarantino immediately said yes. So it was Rodriguez who's like, "Why don't you just do it?" So, but I don't
was
know.
that scene in there though before
So
he
I know that
accepted
they
the
were
role?
massive rewrites when they started signing people on. Like when Juliette Lewis signed on, they rewrote it. When Harvey Keitel joined on, they rewrote it for him to give him more to do. Because originally this was much more of like a Assault on Precinct 13 type film where they are trapped mostly inside
Right.
the, or
The
like a
hostages, the
key,
hostages and the killers have to band together because they have a shared enemy, right? Yeah,
like a Key
makes
Largo
sense.
or something. Like, no, that's different, but like that's more of like a stuck in one spot.
No, you mean Rio Bravo?
Real Bravo, yeah, and like
Yeah.
just like something like that. But then it morphed when, because so his books, like he loves the getaway, he loves film, so you could tell he just went, I'm gonna write this, and then they asked him to be in it. But I think it works. I think he knows the dialogue, but I think you're right about the acting, because sometimes you watch a film and there's a really interesting written scene, but the actor's not too trained, and they're supposed to get annoyed, but they go from 0 to 10 in 1 second and they get really mad. Like an actor's good when they do anger well. Like the
Hmm.
lesser actors are like, "What are you talking about?" And you're like, "Geez Louise!" But then I think better actors know how to calibrate anger levels. And so yeah, maybe Tarantino just wasn't there yet for what he was being asked to do. But I still think Rodriguez and him got the best of what they could from him out of that. It's an interesting point.
And yeah, I don't think it's a bad performance, but I do think, with the benefit of hindsight, you realize, yeah, Tarantino's just kind of at his cockiest
And he
as a
should be though,
director.
right? I mean,
Yeah, I
he
mean,
had
for good
Reservoir Dogs
reason.
and Pulp Fiction. He's hot.
He's riding hot,
Yeah.
absolutely. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure about casting yourself in this role, where you're playing cool and oh, look how cool it is that I'm playing the serial rapist. It's like, I don't know, dude.
Yeah.
I think you're a little high on your own supply, a little bit.
But I
But,
do think this is a movie that only exists because of the run that the two directors were on. El Mariachi was big. Desperado, yeah, what a movie! I love that film. Did I tell you how I watched that? So I would go to my dad's
how
house.
you watched it?
I would go to my dad's house every other weekend, and I went to go see it. And then this guy Alfonso went with us as well, and like he went and watched Desperado. My dad and I watched like Indian in the Cupboard, or I don't know, something like that. And so after it was done, Alfonso walked out and was like, he's like, that was pretty good. He's like, there's this lady, Salma Hayek, and he was telling me about it. I'm like, oh man. So the next weekend when I was with my mom, she let me watch anything. So I went and watched it. And that just like changed. I was like, wow. I went and bought throwing knives from a flea market, threw them into a palm tree, almost landed between my feet. She took me to a flea market to buy throwing knives because of that movie. But I loved it.
You'll take your eye out.
And I had no shoes on in the grass throwing knives into a palm tree, Professor Mike Dillon. That's very Florida. It might be the most Florida thing ever. But
Well,
yeah,
only if then like you were attacked by a gator or something like that.
yes, bit by a water moccasin.
Like a meth gator. Sorry to pile on the stereotypes, but
Yeah,
I'm with you. Yeah, Salma Hayek is so hot
yeah.
in this movie. Yeah, just yeah.
Yeah.
My only objection is that her character is pretty underused.
Yeah.
They kind of set her up to be like the final boss, but she's dispatched in the same scene that she's in. But I mean, that said, it's such a fascinating moment in the film because it's the fulcrum, right? This is the moment when the film pivots from being a crime thriller to a horror film. So you kind of have to have this very, and you don't have to, but it's useful to have this show-stopping moment that halts the momentum of the film so that we can be as transfixed on this performance, both narratively and tonally, as the characters are. It's mesmerizing. It's kind of a neat trick in terms of sort of marking the midpoint of the film, and it's after this that it becomes a different movie. The snake doesn't do much for me, frankly, but once she steps out onto the tables and performs the dance, I'm just like, oh yeah, I would be absolutely mesmerized if I was in the room. This is phenomenal.
I think that also leads to the Aztec vampire type lore of being more reptile like. And so
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
why
that makes more sense since you said it. Yeah.
Yeah, and but that's a really great point because if you think about the first scene, you have Michael Parks, you have this dialogue scene that's lived in and real, and they create this world, and all of a sudden you realize there's kidnappers in the background, and then you have it really heightened, and then he comes back out, and then he just gets plugged in the back of the head. That's a really effective scene that it kind of you don't see things coming. And so I think that's a really neat transition between the way they play that first scene, and then when they go to that, yeah, you're just like, somehow you're just completely transfixed, and then everything
Yeah.
kicks off. So that's a smart.
It's probably the longest stretch of the film without dialogue.
Yeah,
I imagine, and so it's just kind of a nice. The movie kind of pauses to hold its breath a little bit and say like, hey, check this out for a minute because it's like take a seat, take this in because it's about to get crazy.
and it
But
does.
it's just a really effective scene. It's a great performance, such as it is. There's one bit when she's pouring the champagne down her leg, and then she kind of lifts her leg up and lick it. Like she had to be on wires for that, right? The balancing act of that little bit seems supernatural to me, but I don't know. You know what I'm talking about,
Great
right?
core strength. A lot of yoga coming in there.
Yeah.
Also, she steps on a pretty ratty table. And that thing's pretty solid for her to just step onto it. So I wonder if
Yeah.
they plan on that. And also, those legs survive 4 vampire women being dropped on it. So the construction of these tables is pretty good. I'll give them that.
I will say, going back to Clooney for a second, because he was the untested one, right? Salma Hayek is kind of new on the scene post Desperado as well, but
Fair
the movie
game.
doesn't hinge. Yeah, but the movie doesn't hinge on her performance in the way it does for Clooney. And a question we've been asking, we asked about when we did like Rapid Fire with Brandon Lee or Demolition Man, which is like really early in Sandra Bullock's career. The question of, yeah, they're good in the movie. Brandon Lee's not a terrific actor, but he's very serviceable in that movie. The question isn't, are they delivering an amazing performance? It's, could you have watched those performances at the time and thought, this kid's got something. This kid needs to be in more things. And I think with Sandra Bullock, our answer was like emphatically yes,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
we put her in more stuff. She's great. Kind of carried the movie. And so the thing for me with Clooney, even though you had some quibbles about some of the line delivery and is he threatening enough, things like that, I feel like, and he's already a star on TV at this point, so maybe this doesn't really count. But if I had seen sort of sight unseen, if I had just seen this movie without knowing who George Clooney was, would I have thought, you know what, I think he'd be good in other stuff? I think absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, this guy deserves to have a career, and put him in more stuff. And then of course, he eventually proves to be very adept at both comedy as well as drama. And he starts winning Oscars, and he's maybe a bit hit and miss as a director, but a very serious filmmaker, I think. Yeah, you can give him credit for that.
He does give the
So the
worst
question
Oscar speech ever.
for Siriana,
Yeah. I'm
I don't
out of
remember.
Hollywood is out of touch. He's like, he praised Hollywood for being like progressive, and it's like, he's like, one woman, like he praised the woman from Gone in the Wind winning an Oscar, and it's like, Todd, George, you don't know your Hollywood history, man. Please stop.
So you mean Hattie McDaniel?
Yeah, but he's like, yeah, we give people Oscar, like, George, like, this is the time that you were worked with the Weinsteins, and they're still around, and like casting
Oh.
couches, and
Well, okay, so he can be a little smug, but
yeah, yeah, the
but
smug
I
cloud
think
from South
he's
Park, but great actor. Oh brother, where art thou? Descendants. The guy can act. He can.
and he also makes good choices. I think The
Yeah,
American is really interesting. I love his sort of outspoken politics. I think that's an opinion of mine, but I think it's a healthy thing that he was also part of this sort of mid 2000s cohort of celebrities and the kind of Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, that class of people who were very vocal about the philanthropy they did. And so they were the kind of people who said, okay, paparazzi, if you're going to follow me everywhere I go, then I'm going to make you come with me to sort of post Katrina New Orleans, or I'm going to make you come with me to Sudan. Or so, if you're going to be following me anywhere, I'm going to direct that attention to issues that I think you should be covering more than my love life. And so I felt like Clooney was an example eventually, right, in the 2000s, once he's a superstar. It's a great example of someone who knew how to mobilize his celebrity toward good causes. And I always kind of admired that.
and he has a huge tequila business too, so he's a good businessman. And he mobilized. No, I mean, I don't know. I guess, yeah,
Yeah, Clooney's
I like
cool.
him, and he's good. Jay Kelly
Now,
kind of was a miss for me, but still.
as for Salma Hayek, I think she really had an uphill battle, which I admire that she stuck it out, because she was just the sex pot for a good number of years, right? I mean, it took her until Frida at least to be taken more seriously as a dramatic actress, and I think she's aging into like really good character work
Mm-hmm.
that I think is well earned, because I rather glibly said like she's really hot in this movie, kind of invoking my own my teenage years when I first saw her in Desperado as well. She's just exceptionally gorgeous. But I think that, that kind of typecast her for a bit.
No, I mean, absolutely. Like, in Fair Game, she was just the angry girlfriend, and Fled, she's the girlfriend again.
Yeah.
Fools Rush In, that was a nice little rom-com. Like,
Yeah, that one's cute.
yeah, and then like
But then like
54, but she was the sex.
Wild West, she's just there to like look sexy and have cleavage, So
And
um
Dogma, she's stripper. She's a stripper in the beginning of that. So like,
right,
yeah,
right.
yeah,
Linda Fiorentino's in that as well, right?
yeah,
Um
yeah. But you're right, Frida in 2002, and then she like went over to After the Sunset, but that's like a steamy movie for both of them. And then she kind of,
yeah.
and then she just
I
started
mean,
doing
like
cool
I really
stand-up movies.
like Beatrice at Dinner, I think is a pretty solid indie film. This was like 2016, 17.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, she stuck with it though. But I like that. I've always liked her on screen though. Good screen delivery. I mean, in Desperado, even though a lot of I mean, listen, she's definitely the gaze is definitely on her, but I still recognize her as a good actor in that movie. She's good. She knows the scene. She carries it well. She's a
Yeah,
really
she's
good
got
actor.
something. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Any other thing we want to talk about for this From Dusk Till Dawn? Is this What else haven't we talked
Um,
about? I don't like
one
that scene
thing,
where, like, is
yeah.
Clooney dumb enough to be like, oh yeah, move the Jap? And it's like, why? Like, he seemed like kind of a smart guy, but maybe, I
No,
mean,
but this is Tarantino thinking he's being edgy, right? Like all
yeah.
the N-word use in Pulp Fiction, and I might be misremembering, but probably from Reservoir Dogs as well. Like Dogs opens with his whole thing about like a virgin and Madonna's big dick, 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 and the person who delivers that monologue is Tarantino himself, right? So there is a sort of, I don't want to just overuse the word, but there's just something kind of juvenile about Tarantino, especially in those early days. I think he becomes a much more sophisticated and, dare I say, mature filmmaker from about Inglorious Bastards onward, when he's really thinking about kind of the meaning of what he's doing, and he's really expanding his art form in ways that we don't need to necessarily get into right now. But there is a kind of like snicker, snicker, look what I'm getting away with aspect to Tarantino's early work that he doesn't really start to shed until Jackie Brown. And I feel most prominently in like the cameo where it's just like a elongated piss joke in Desperado. In this one, I think, back when he fancied himself as like an actor good enough to appear in his own stuff, he likes to give himself the sort of bad boy image. And how do you measure being a bad boy? Well, look at the crazy shit I'm willing to say on screen. I think there is something kind of juvenile about that. That's in par with the like open phallic imagery peppered throughout this movie. It's not just Sex Machine has this like dick pistol, but also the George Clooney kind of fabricates a piston
Yeah.
thing
Yep.
that, and then he like holds it up against his crotch like it's a giant, dildo drill, and he starts killing people, killing vampires with it. The whole thing is just kind of silly in a way that I think Tarantino has, to his credit, kind of grown out of a little bit.
Thank
That's where I
gosh.
feel that's where I feel the kind of the is most dated about the film.
I do.
There's an immaturity, even though it's very well crafted. There's an immaturity to this movie that I think you kind of have to overlook in order to enjoy its merits.
I'm really happy that we're past the point where people are just trying to rip off Tarantino. I don't know if you, in the 90s it was just everywhere. Like when Pulp Fiction hit and all these, and you get like that kind of dialogue for a long time, but it's not Tarantino. So even when he was immature, there still was a rhyme to his dialogue. It flowed. And then when people just started being like, yeah, it's
Oh yeah,
Tarantino-esque, you're like, oh no.
yeah. That was a good decade of sort of post Tarantino people just trying to bite his style.
Oh,
Absolutely.
I got so, and it feels so fake when like Tarantino did it out of love. I mean, I think the guy loves I know the guy loves movies, and he did it. I think his writing was just, you read about the way he grew up and everything, and it feels just more organic to him. But then people try to mimic his style, and oh, but this was good. I'm very excited about this conversation. I love that we did this.
I did think of one last thing to
Yeah.
bring up, which I'd forgotten about, and it startled me how good it is. The big matte painting at the end,
Oh,
the last
gorgeous.
shot.
Oh yeah, what a great ending! But that's a good ending. Just
I just hope someone kept that mat and it's hanging on a wall somewhere. I don't know how big it is in real life, but because they obviously comped in the RV driving away, but the rest is clearly a painting. And that, it's not just a great image to end on, just visually really striking, but it's also just kind of, if we're talking about where this movie places within the 90s, and the extent to which it does or does not represent the culture at the time, it's also a movie that's kind of a last, not a last, but a sort of nudging toward the last era of practical effects, because this is post Jurassic Park, and VFX are really starting to creep in and overtake everything, and just to have like really old fashioned movie tricks work so beautifully and visually in this film kind of gives the movie a certain charm, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, these guys were young then. I think this movie is more effective for me than the Grindhouse films because they had huge budgets to make a Grindhouse movie, and they were older, wizened filmmakers. This one, they made it really fast. Rodriguez had to edit this in a few weeks because he also directed it and he was doing press. So I think this movie, yeah, I don't know. I love it. It was about the craft. And that was the whole reason for the script, though, was to showcase their work. And so you have matte paintings, you
Yeah.
have really, like explosive gore, and no, I dig it. I dig it a
No,
lot.
but
Oh,
that's the problem with Grindhouse, which is not only that it has a studio budget, but they had to physically go in and add scratches to the film or like real
Yeah,
missing
yeah,
and things like that. It's like the fact like you can't replicate that. It's like you can't have deliberate camp.
yeah,
You know, when you try for it, you get nonsense like Velocipaster, where it's you're aiming to be you're trying to make a bad movie as opposed to genuinely trying to make a movie and then having it be bad. Like those are very different things, and you can't have intentional camp and you can't have sort of fake grindhouse. It has to be genuinely grimy, not let's add effects to make it look grimy. And that's the problem I always had with grindhouse, whereas From Dusk Till Dawn genuinely feels more like grindhouse. And the fact that
yeah.
they had like a truncated shooting schedule and they had to run and gun it, you can feel that sloppiness in the movie a little bit, which makes it more akin to like genuine low budget exploitation cycle films of the 70s, which is what this movie is going for and what Grindhouse claims to be going for, but ends up being kind of a facsimile of it, right?
I completely agree. This is younger dudes, no time, not a lot. They really didn't have much time, so they just went and knocked this out, and they had a lot of good actors, and you could see the fuzz on the screen from the film, and I dig it. And I like that Juliette Lewis doesn't go with him at the end. That'd have been odd. Like I like that she still can go. She has a lot to explain.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what her life looks like from here on out. I don't know how much money he hands her. It can't be that much.
Like five
But
grand or something.
I do like the line. He says, I'm an asshole. I'm not a fucking asshole." I think I've stolen that line from time to time.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that's good though. She's like, but I love the way she acts. You need company. And he kind of thinks about it, and he's like, no, it's not. That's not the way it is. So I don't know. It's a good ending. Yeah, you can just, but I mean, they're also smart. I don't know. I know we talked about that death earlier, but I think it does do. You can understand all the ideas in this movie, I guess. Even if I think that the death of the bank teller isn't great, you understand why. There's a why to it. You understand why they did a lot of these things. So it's. I think that's just another reason why people still
Yeah,
appreciate it.
all,
So.
all all things considered, I think the movie works.
Mhm.
I think it holds up in a lot of ways, and I think a lot of the ways it doesn't hold up are were probably problems then and are more apparent to us now. And then some of the problems I think are very easily attributable to just kind of understanding the culture and circumstance in which the film was made. And that's not to excuse any shenanigans in the movie, but it kind of makes it an object of its time, which is very interesting. And I mean, like for one thing, I felt myself vibrate a little bit when I started the movie and the Dimension logo came up at the start. I thought, oh hey, when's the last time I saw a Dimension movie? Probably
Phantoms.
probably on movie films and flicks with Mark Hoffmeyer.
I do want to say last thing before we get out of here. Full Tilt Boogie. There's
Yeah.
it's a if you want to know what set life is like on a non-union shoot, watch it because I love that everyone's complaining. The ADs are pissed. The ADs are yelling. Like Tarantino and Rodriguez were laughing about the first AD. They're like, it's tough love. The second AD is like, I've just been in it too long. I can't get out. And everyone's like, the money. And they're like, well, what do you do it for? He's like, well, I want to raise enough money. So I want to make enough money so I can work on union shoots, not non-union shoots. Like they're just complaining about the shoot. Everyone's tired. There's a like a 10-minute, 5-minute sequence where people are on this bus. Like I worked 18-hour days. The bus left us. We had no lunch. I'm trying to do meal penalties, but it's a non-union shoot. And at the end, they were finally able to get insurance because Lawrence Bender, the producer, listened. So all the cast members who worked a certain amount of time had up to a year of insurance afterwards, which was good. But I've never seen a documentary showcase how life sucking working on set is, and it made me happy. So yeah, if you get a chance. And also they had a best
Yeah, that,
man butt competition. They took photos of guys' butts, put on a board, and everyone had to vote on the best guy crew member's butt. I was like, I've never seen that before. That wouldn't happen nowadays, but I thought it was kind of funny. Juliette Lewis was like
it,
13-1, but I wanted 33. And
it
that was a
kind of it's just only I mean I'm interested, especially with your endorsement. I think that's something I should check out. I think I'd find it interesting, but everything you're saying only reinforces my idea that this is just basically a bunch of boys getting together and like snicker snicker, wouldn't it be funny if we just have a bunch of stripper vampires?
yeah, no, I agree.
Feel
And then
sorry for Juliette Lewis.
and on set they were talking about it. And like even her assistant, Clooney's assistant, was like, yeah, the dancers like him. Jeez Louise. But yeah, 96. Tarantino. I guess it was at
96.
the time.
Pour one out.
Last thing, that kill count is amazing. That's the world's first Carnage count. I just want to put that out there. That made me very happy.
So watch Curdled. They call back to it.
Oh, I love it. I'll do that. What are we doing next? We can talk about that later. I need to find your
I don't know
email.
what we're doing. Yeah, let's talk about it.
All right, cool.
Pick something good.
All right, so thank you for joining me. So for me, Mark Hoffmeyer, for Professor Mike Dillon, this is Movies from the Flicks. We'll see you next week.